let me introduce Jerry Kroth. And Jerry almost needs no introduction. He's a professor from the University of Santa Clara, professor emeritus. He looks and researches many different fields, from psychotherapies, dreams, et cetera, and he's given a number of talks here, and I think the reason that everyone's here is because everyone knows Jerry, and he's now going to be talking about extraterrestrials and crop circles, and I think that'll be very exciting, and I want to welcome him. And he also has a new book out with regard to this, Messages from the Gods, a Scientific Exposition on Extraterrestrial Origin of Crop Circles. So, Jerry?
I'm completely wired up, so I hope I feel like I'm a robot here. So, this is the topic. This is, microphone. I have a little reverb. That's nice. Reverb is always good. This is a question I would like us to look at. It's almost how we're going to end this. Are you sure crop circles are all human-made fakes? 52% of the American population believe crop circles are made by human beings. But the scientific community, academia, believes all crop circles are made by human beings, tricksters, crop circle makers, but not aliens. It is a completely forbidden subject in the academic world. All the peer-reviewed studies that came from smart people were usually professors who were retired. And then they started working on subjects that they wanted to work on. So we're looking at some structures that are just strange, and these are people here. Unbelievable, inscrutable. And we're asking, are you absolutely sure vandals and trespassers and guys who wanted to go to a pub and have a beer did this? All of these things, they did it in the dark. They did it in just one night. They did it with no footprints. They did it with no sounds. They did it with no barking dogs. They did it with incredible precision. No footprints coming or going. Now, some crop circles have footprints, but not these. You see the people here? That's an amazing construction. Okay, so we're going to look at this very seriously. Is it possible we could be receiving messages which we're totally ignoring? So, here's a movie of a crop circle, but I want you to see the detail. This is supposed to be done in the middle of the night by tricksters who went and had a beer afterwards and had a big laugh and said, "We fooled everybody. They'll think aliens made it." Look at this. Could you do that at 2 o'clock in the morning in the dark? Look at the flow of the crops. So I've got a couple more movie shots here, and then we're going to get into talking about. Take a look at this one. Want to care to translate that one? Could you figure that one out? What is that saying? Okay, so we start with, this is a book that I wrote, Messages from the Gods. You might not be able to see it, so I put in 2 little green arrows to direct your attention. A scientific exposition on the extraterrestrial origin of crop circles. That's a very controversial title. Okay, but that is exactly what the book is about. So let's start with hoaxes and deception and fakers. 2 guys named Doug and Dave in England in the 90s said, "We went out and we did it all ourselves and we fooled the world. Ha ha! And then we went to a pub and had a beer." And people started to believe that Doug and Dave indeed made all the crop circles. Well, Doug and Dave made some of the crop circles. One scientist said, hey, I studied 19 crop circles and I saw Euclid's 13th theorem. He only had 12 theorems. This is the 13th theorem in 19. Doug and Dave, did you make that? Doug and Dave refused to answer. They didn't reply. I wrote Doug and Dave. They didn't reply either. I want to know, how did you do this nuclear physics crop circle? you guys. You are really great. So they said they made 200 crop circles, and I looked up to try to get a list, because I've got 4,000 crop circles that have been published, and I couldn't find 200. I found about 20 that they did, and they were kind of shabby. So here's a video that was made by hoaxers in the middle of the night and said, look, we can do it. So if you look carefully, these are real people making a crop circle, and you can see them walking, and they try to walk down these tram lines so you won't see their footprints, so you'll think, aha, aliens did it. Can you see the little people walking around? Okay, well, they're making a crop circle. Congratulations. They have a television podcast called Circle Makers TV, and they have gatherings. And most people think, okay, that's it. That's the end of the question. Of course, all crop circles are made just that way. Well, I wanted to study the hoaxers a little more, so I tried to interview a few of them. But remember, when you go to a farmer's field and you trespass and you make about $3,000 worth of damage to his crop, he doesn't like it. It's a criminal act. These are trespassers. So this is a guy named the Archbishop, Reverend Archbishop P.I. Staker, and he makes crop circles in England. Good for you. And I interviewed him, and I've interviewed a few other people, and I said, well, just how many did you make in your lifetime? Because I know there are 4,000. Do you think you made 10%, 20%? How many crop circles? And they said, oh, no, we made them all. Our teams, we did this one, and we did that one, and we did all of them. And then I detected there's a lot of bragging going on. Doug and Dave did a lot of bragging. These guys do a lot of bragging too. And it's hard to get any kind of an estimate how many are really human-made and how many aren't. But I'm not interested in human-made crop circles. They are not intriguing to me. They're kind of stupid. They're kind of shabby. You can see the footprints coming and going. I was not impressed by their work. They consider themselves artists. I think they say they're artistes. You can see the footprints coming and going, and that's not interesting to me. Okay, here's the one that's interesting to me. I thought, wow, that is really profound. And there's a serious place on the web called the Crop Circle Connector, and there's geometrical essays about this, but this farmer didn't like what happened, and he said, the very next day, I'm plowing this under. They're wrecking my fields. And so there it goes, and by the end of the afternoon, that crop circle was gone. So how do you tell a fake, that is a human-made crop circle, from something that might not be human-made? Well, I'm going to be very cautious before I go into saying aliens made it. I'll get there, but slowly. So one sign is that there are dead insects, dead flies, in the more authentic crop circles, the one that are not made by the guys who are drinking beer. Flies are standing there, they're dead, frozen in place. No one knows how they died. They're intact. And they think it's some kind of heat or radiation that killed them. But that's one distinguishing characteristic. Another is that when a human makes a crop circle, he blows the seedlings. Whereas when they're not obviously human, they're bent. That's another way of telling one from the other. Here's a more authentic crop circle.
The night this formation came down, it was windy. This is a high altitude location. This takes a battering by the weather. So no, we were with two other researchers. We were the first little group of people to come in here. No footprints, no mud, no bad, no broken plants. All the centres were perfect. No sign of human activity or entry into this field.
It seemed almost impossible that could be the work of a few humans going out and smashing the plants down with pieces of wood. It just seemed far too sophisticated, far too perfect. Some of these designs, you couldn't draw them out with a piece of paper freehand or with a desk lamp, let alone 1,000 feet wide in a wheat field in the dark, in the rain. Sometimes it just seemed impossible.
Too loud. Too loud. Fine. We can turn that down. Let me see if I can walk through the laser light here and turn this down. Okay. Well, you'll go have to deal with technology with those people. It looks nice over where I'm standing. Now, Rupert Sheldrake, famous biologist, said, the fact that it is possible to forge a 50-pound note does not mean all 50-pound notes are forgeries. So that is kind of the rationale we're following here. So here's some science. Very few peer-reviewed articles on crop circles. Very few. But one retired astrophysicist said, this one is really intricate. What is that? It is so jagged and so precise. I want to figure it out. Who did it? What's it saying? And he worked on it and finally found out that indeed this is pi. It's a pictogram of pi to 10 digits. Good for you. Congratulations. Good job. Now, what kind of drunken group of crop circle makers went out and did that at 3 a.m.? Because think about it. If you're out there doing this precise crop circle and you're off by 6 inches, one of the digits of pi is off. This is incredibly precise. You can read about this online on the web. So, we are now going to talk about extraterrestrial crop circles. In my book, I found 40, and every time I did it, I said, my God, is this true? Is this really true? If my interpretation of this crop circle is right, human beings simply could not have made this. So, each of these things is complex. We can't do 40, we can't do 30, we're going to do 4 tonight. And every one of them is difficult. So it requires your patience to understand the absolute incredible complexity of these things. Let's start. In the book, I cover crop circles that were from Bavaria, the Czech Republic, Slovenia, France, Kansas, Switzerland, but all the ones we're talking about here, the 4 that I'm going to talk about, are from England. So number 1, get ready. This is a crop circle called the Wollstonecraft Circle of July 2010. It looks like a bunch of circles interacting, circles around circles, and it just so happens that this crop circle appeared across the river from the Oldbury nuclear power plant in England. Is that a coincidence? Somebody just went out there, had a beer, and drew circles? Wonderful. But a guy in the Crop Circle Connector publication put a line through the two major circles, and it points to the Oldbury nuclear power station across the way. So I thought, aha, maybe this has something to do with radiation, nuclear power. Maybe it's a message. So one guy wrote an essay, and he said, I wrote to a physicist. Now, I have to confess that I wrote to 20 different scientists, but I didn't tell them I was interested in crop circles. I showed him a diagram, and I said, what is that? I wrote to a physicist. I said, this looks like an interference pattern. He wrote back and said, I never saw an interference pattern like that. So I did get a feeling that this crop circle has a sense of motion, interaction, movement. And I thought, maybe this crop circle has something to do with radioactivity, a nuclear reaction, getting warmer, thinking about this. One guy said, see those circles around there? That's uranium. I said, wait a minute. Uranium has 7 electron shells. This has 6 circles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He said, you're right. He said, there are very few radioactive elements that have 6, but there are a few. Now, see that diagram? That's what I sent the scientist, so he wouldn't think I was talking about crop circles. Now we're going to start talking about nuclear physics. So get ready. I told you this was going to be, there's homework involved in every single one of these. So there is one radioactive element called astatane, and it's got 6 shells around it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's portrayed in the crop circle. That's cool. Nice. Another one. Cesium. That's bad. Okay, when Chernobyl blows, you got cesium. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's polonium. Do you remember, how many of you know who this guy is? Litvinenko. Raise your hands. Look at this. What a literate audience you are. Litvinenko was supposedly poisoned by Putin. He was a dissident, and he was in England, and he met with some guy who put something in his tea. It was polonium. Polonium doesn't exist on planet Earth. It only comes from nuclear power plants. It's extremely fatal. 10 micrograms. He said Putin killed him, and then he died. He's the only person ever to have died from polonium poisoning that we know. So we have those big circles. We've got 3 candidates, but what are the 2 at the top? I couldn't find anything radioactive with 2 shells, and then I found this one, beryllium. It has 2 electron shells. Wow, I'm starting to get warm here, thinking, what is going on? All right, I don't want to kill you with complexity, but we have discovered 4 radioactive elements in this crop circle, and right across the river, we have a nuclear power plant. Let's go across the river. Oldbury, 49 years old, aging nuclear power plant, 2 reactors. The people, local people are saying, close this. This is going to explode. This is a dinosaur. Get rid of it. They don't like it. This is very dangerous. Please get rid of this nuclear reactor. Close it down. This first incident happens in 2007. There's an accident. The British government decides to close 1 reactor, but says the other one is fine. We're going to keep the other one open. People saying, please close it down. It's dangerous. Now, the crop circle comes 3 years later in 2010. Nobody pays attention to crop circles. Nobody's deciphering it. Nobody's figuring it out. The year later, in 2011, there's another accident in the 2nd reactor, and the British government says, okay, we got to close this down. And they shut Oldbury completely down and started to clean up the site. The site took 5 years to clean up, and I was interested in the debris. I wanted to find out, hey, did you guys find polonium or acetane or any of those things in the debris? And they wrote a report. I got the report, read the report, and guess what? All those things were there. So let's take a small trip to Chernobyl. Okay? This group of anti-nuclear activists said, if you don't close Oldbury and it blows like Chernobyl blowed, all of that red is going to make England uninhabitable in the dark parts. And that includes London. Okay? So if this reactor blows like Chernobyl blows, that's what's going to happen. And they really campaigned against it. So in the cleanup of Oldbury, we found polonium, we found beryllium, we found acetane. Stop, pause, let's go to Chernobyl, take a little trip and take a look at this incident in 1986. That fire is sending out cesium. It's going to Belarus and to Poland and to Denmark and to Sweden and ultimately to Western Europe. This is the city of Pripyat, which housed 50,000 people supportive of Chernobyl. They told the people you can leave and come back in a few days. They never came back. So that is a city that is completely empty, uninhabitable. That's Chernobyl in the winter. Now, radioactive dust from Chernobyl reached across northern and western Europe, and even as far as the eastern United States. It will take almost 100 years to completely clean up this site. The Chernobyl explosion released 400 times more radioactive fallout than was released in Hiroshima. Here's a young man who said, I can go to Chernobyl and make a short movie. You can only be there about 20 minutes. But
you can find all of these high-rise Soviet apartments completely empty and crumbling, and the forest is basically reclaiming this whole town. When the residents of Pripyat were told to evacuate, they were told that they would only be away for 2 weeks. So they left most of their belongings exactly where they were, and they never came back. So their lives are on display here.
So let's go to Fukushima now just for a moment, 2011. It cost $3.4 billion to build Fukushima, but it's costing $200 billion to clean it up. There was a tsunami, you know the story, contaminated an area of 30 kilometers, $500 billion in economic losses. Cesium was detected 200 kilometers from the site. 56% of all fish caught off the shores of Fukushima are contaminated. 30,000 people permanently displaced. And it's not over yet. Not anyone's. An American group tried to do a simulation of radioactivity that's emanating from Fukushima and going across the Pacific Ocean. This is their estimate of what's going to happen over the course of 5 years. In 3 years, the radiation gets to the Bering Sea. In 5 years, it reaches the west coast of the United States. And the red stuff is not particularly happy. So these nuclear disasters are really quite bad for the human race, and for not just for the people of Japan or the people of Russia. So, what else do I have to say? Let's go back to Oldbury. There's a crop circle, there's a nuclear power plant. Who did this? That was my question. Let's be objective, Jerry. Let's say Vandals did it. Crappies did it. The guys who are on Circle TV did it. They went and drew circles, and it has nothing to do with Oldbury. They just made some circles right to the edge of the river. And you're just making all this up. Okay, I thought about that, but I disregarded it. The second thing is maybe anti-nuclear activists, the ones that wanted to close Oldbury, maybe they're the ones who made this crop circle. Maybe they're the ones who are saying, see, we're going to have all these radioactive elements, and you connect these two dots, it's pointed to Oldbury, and maybe anti-nuclear activists made that crop circle. Not aliens, anti-nuclear activists. Two problems with that. First, anti-nuclear activists care about the human race. Why are they vandalizing a farmer's field? Why are they committing an act of trespass? Secondly, nobody's going to pay attention to the crop circle and its meaning. If you want to get your message across, why don't you make a crop circle that says, in English, this reactor is going to blow, close it now. That would make a lot more sense. More people would pay attention to it, right? So then who made the crop circle? That's the last question. And by default, I come up with the idea that an extraterrestrial source, entity, made this circle. It's a message that's hard to decode, but it is having something to do. It's a benevolent message to the human race and to the people of England about closing Oldbury. So, why is Oldbury important? One, cesium is portrayed in that crop circle. Cesium is found at Oldbury. Acetane is portrayed in the crop circle. Acetane is found in Oldbury. Beryllium is portrayed in the crop circle. Beryllium is found at Oldbury in the debris. Polonium is portrayed in the crop circle, and polonium is found in Oldbury. Furthermore, a potential fissile reaction is depicted in the elements that are interacting inside that crop circle. And a potential fissile reaction was averted at Oldbury. So that's where you sort of start saying, wow. And I think during this lecture, you're going to say wow 4 times. This is your first opportunity to say, wow. So if you translated this crop circle into English, this is what it would say. Pay attention to the aging, defective fission reactor across the river. The elements cesium, astatine, polonium, and beryllium can pose serious danger to this area of your planet and to your species for generations. That's the message. Wow. So, could it be true? And I thought, yeah, that caused me to go, what do you know? That's something else. That's wow. Thank you. Okay, thank you. You made it through your first crop circle. Are you ready for your second wow? Each one of these things takes us to I'm a psychologist with a Ph.D. I didn't know anything about nuclear physics or molecular biology. I wrote this as a layman. I wrote to scientists. I said, is this right? Is that right? Is this right? But if I said this is a crop circle, they'd say, okay, get away from me. You're going into the junk folder. So here's one. July 29th, 2012. What in God's name is that? It's in a red poppy field. If you look closer, you see little people. Can you see the little people? These are the little people right there. So it's about the size of a football field. Well, a Ph.D. in organic chemistry who graduated from Caltech, lives in Australia, said, I know what that is. That, first of all, before I get to him, this red poppy field, the farmer didn't like it, left a sign, please do not enter my field. Okay. He discovered this is vitamin A. And he said he superimposed the Lewis diagram of vitamin A on the crop circle, and there it is. Almost perfect fit. And now I don't discover these things. He discovered this, I think, with two other people. But my question, where my expertise is, okay, why? Why would you do a crop circle about vitamin A? What are you, selling supplements? Have aliens been co-opted by Big Pharma to start selling vitamin A? What is vitamin A? And then I said to myself, okay, you're going to do this, but you're going to learn some more things that you don't know. Because you think you know what vitamin A is, but you probably don't. So let's go to a scientist and find out what is vitamin A.
In this video, I want to talk about vitamin A, okay? There's some real interesting things about vitamin A. It's a fat-soluble vitamin. What does that mean? You have water-soluble vitamins and you have fat-soluble vitamins. Fat-soluble vitamins have the ability to travel through fat, to be stored in fat longer. It has the ability to go through cell walls because the layer around cells are fat, lipid layers or fat layers. These vitamin A, fat-soluble vitamins, can go right through the cell where water-soluble vitamins cannot. So they can affect the deep parts of the cell, the DNA, the alteration of the DNA, and that's why vitamin A deficiencies can really affect what your skin turns into, okay, at the genetic level. So you can have a lot of little flaking things in your skin, little white little dots on the skin, on the hair follicles. You can have little skin flakes on the scalp. You can have acne, different types of acne, cystic acne, acne under the back. It can create a lot of problems with your vision as well because vitamin A is necessary for your eye. So if you can't see at night, when you're driving at night and it's hard to see, that's vitamin A deficiency. Okay? Also, lubrication of the eye and the mouth. And anything, any glandular secretion, if you don't have enough of that lubrication, that's a vitamin A deficiency. Also infections, sinus infections, ear infections, lung infections, all can be triggered by a low vitamin A level. So it has a lot to do with your immune system. So vitamin A gives support to the eye.
Okay, that's enough for him. I'm still sitting there saying, what? We're going to have a crop circle that tells you about improving your skin and getting rid of pimples? It's retinol. It has something to do with vision. But wait a minute. This is a crop circle in a red poppy field. And vitamin A has something to do with color perception and night vision and blindness. Hold on. Don't give up. So I did some research. You have to do it on every one of these. Vitamin A is related to visual pigment perception. Pigment, red. Vitamin A deficiency is related to color blindness. Red poppies, very cool. I wondered, how many red poppy fields are there? And I looked in a distant photograph. I didn't see any. I got even a bigger shot. There are no other red poppy fields. The people who made this crop circle decided to put it there when the poppies were blossoming. Masterful. Then I looked up, how long are poppies in blossom? Yes. Are there agronomists here? How long do poppies stay red? 4 weeks. So whoever planned this had to say, we want this crop circle when the poppies are in blossom. They only had a 4-week window to pull it off. Wonderful, great, but why would you do this? There's more. Vitamin A deficiency, I discovered, I didn't know this at all, is related to fertility. Women who experience recurrent miscarriages suffered vitamin A deficiencies. Female rats with vitamin A deficiency had trouble getting pregnant, had embryos with birth defects. Never knew that. So, another study showed vitamin A deficiency impacts spermatogenesis, which we all know what that means. And vitamin A is related to a higher incidence of death from measles and diarrhea in children. Well, now we're starting to see a bigger picture about vitamin A. Now, I've written to 2 chemists, and they both say it's vitamin A, but one said that's a dimer. I don't know what the hell a dimer is. The other said, no, it's not a dimer. It is a dimer. It isn't a dimer. But they both agreed it was vitamin A. I think the interpretation is that's a vitamin A molecular diagram, and the other thing is the retina. Okay? That's my interpretation of their work. So that's what we're working on. But again, the question is why? Why would you put a vitamin A crop circle in the middle of nowhere in England during poppy season when everything is red? Notice this slide is red. Well, here's a picture of vitamin A deficiency in the world on planet Earth. And all the areas that are yellow and red are people who have a vitamin A deficiency. Now we're starting to talk about the human race. Now it's starting to make sense. 250 to 500,000 children are born blind because of vitamin A deficiency, and half of them die within the first year because of that blindness. Okay? There's 1/7 of the human race suffers from vitamin A deficiency, which affects vision, intelligence, immunity, fertility, mortality. That's 14% of the human race. Well, this crop circle is starting to take on meaning. So here I go again asking, well, who did this anyway? Let's say a group of Vandals did it. Good. Thanks for they're not just circles. It's why did you do vitamin A? Well, we just made circles. No, you didn't. You made a molecular diagram. So I had got rid of that A. But how about vitamin A activists? Wait a minute. There might be a group on the internet that talks about vitamin A deficiency. There sure is some kind of charitable organization that is saying, let's get out there and eliminate and eradicate vitamin A deficiency. So maybe they made the crop circle. That would make sense. Good for you. You went to a village, checked into a hotel, said, when are the poppies coming out? We're going to put it in the poppy field. But you're nice people. You're compassionate people. You're caring people. Why did you vandalize his field? Why didn't you go to the farmer and say, we'd like to put in the crop circle. We'll pay you $3,000 for the damage to your crop. They didn't do that. So vitamin A activists did not make this crop circle because they're nice people and they'd committed an act of violence. And furthermore, if you wanted to make a crop circle and you're a vitamin activist, why don't you put it in English? Help eradicate vitamin A deficiency, act now. Then somebody would pay attention. Nobody pays attention to your molecular diagram. So by default, get ready for your second wow. Who made this crop circle? I say it's very likely, if you're eliminating all the possibilities, maybe you've got another possibility. Think it through. But this is a very strange message, beautifully done in a red poppy field, no footprints, no dogs, Boom, there it is. And it's a statement. So what's the message? Here's the message from the gods. Your knowledge of vitamin A is sufficient, but your ability to deliver it is not. 14% of Homo sapiens are afflicted by this impoverishment and experience blindness, premature death, and reproductive failure because of your inability to eradicate this deficiency in your species. Thank you, E.T. So you say, my God, is that possibly true? Here we go again. So there's your second wow. Oh, good. No, let's all get together. Oh, all right. Now we're going to go into nuclear astrophysics. So get ready for another large homework assignment. These things take a long time. Here are two crop circles. They appeared on the same day, July 13th, 2011. And I thought, that's human. That looks human to me. They went around in circles. One is about 58 miles from the other, both done at night on the same day. No footprints, but so what? It looked human to me. And I was not going to pay any attention to it. But what intrigued me was they were both on the same day. That's really quite rare in crop circle life. So when I looked at a close-up, I said, wow, this is incredibly precise. How do you do that at 3 o'clock in the morning if you're not drunk? I mean, that is really precise. That is amazing. And I said, maybe you shouldn't give up on this. Maybe you should pay attention. So if you start at letter A, the lower part, and you go round and round and round, you lead out of the crop circle. But if you start at B and you go round and round and round, it takes you into the center and then into the other crop circle where you go counterclockwise and out. C is the place where you meet. Now the same thing happens at D and E. Start here, go round and round, it takes you out. E, go round and round and round, it takes you to the other one. That's all I figured out. That's not much. So what are the theories? This is where I come in. Okay, these are called labyrinths. Human beings like labyrinths. Labyrinths have something to do with spiritual awareness, following a journey of enlightenment. There's a long history of labyrinths in human history. So maybe the people who made this crop circle made a labyrinth to go around and meditate. And maybe human beings with a spiritual interest did that. There were some articles in the Crop Circle Connector about that, and I thought, okay, doesn't resonate with me, but that's fine with me. That was good. But I thought, what about wormholes? Wormholes look a lot like this, and I don't know anything about wormholes. So maybe I need to start reading more about space-time and wormholes. That was the second thought. You rotate that, you're going to see a little bit of the crop circle. What? Another one was matter and antimatter. Antimatter is a reflection of matter, like hydrogen and antihydrogen, and they spin in different directions. Clockwise, aha, maybe this is a crop circle about matter and antimatter. And I said, I really don't want to go into that, but if I have to, I will. Then I read this article in a book on electromagnetism, and I saw this diagram. It's a science journal. And I said, my God, there's my crop circle. And there it is, active. This has something to do with electromagnetism. And then I thought, let's talk about the stars. So I made this chance discovery here that there's a thing called a magnetar, which looks a lot like our crop circle, and I wanted to learn more about it. So these are pictures of very, very rare objects in the sky called magnetars. So what is a neutron star and what is a magnetar? A neutron star is, well, I'll show you. If you have a supernova collapse, a little tiny remnant is a neutron star, which is like 30 miles wide. Can you imagine a star that is 30 miles wide? spinning rapidly, sometimes 720 times a second. Pulsar, neutron star. Okay, yes, a star can be 30 miles wide. Here's a pulsar, a little homework assignment. Here it comes, some scientific knowledge.
A pulsar is a rapidly spinning neutron star, which is the small, incredibly dense remnant of a much more massive star. A teaspoon of matter from a neutron star weighs as much as Mount Everest, and a neutron star is so compact that a ball about 15 miles across contains more matter than our sun. Neutron stars spin between 7 and 40,000 times a minute and form with incredibly strong magnetic fields. Rapid spin and intense magnetic fields drive powerful beams of electromagnetic radiation, including gamma rays. As the pulse...
So, guess what? When two neutron stars collide, which is extremely rare, two things happen. Either a black hole is formed or a magnetar is formed. And a magnetar is 18 miles wide. This is one of the most elusive objects in the universe. There are only 10 magnetars that have ever been discovered by the human race in the Milky Way. And when this crop circle happened, we didn't know that much about magnetars. So I consulted experts, but I didn't say I'm interested in crop circles. I showed them diagrams, and I said, what about a magnetar, and how big is it, and how dark? And then I got some answers here and there, and I pieced together this stuff on my own. So let's start with neutron star collisions first. NASA.
Their basic properties were unknown until NASA's Swift satellite began work in 2004. Astronomers suspected that crashing neutron stars could explain short bursts. A neutron star is what remains when a star several times the mass of the Sun collapses and explodes. With more than the Sun's mass packed into a sphere less than 18 miles across, these objects are incredibly dense. Just a sugar cube-sized piece of neutron star can weigh as much as all the water in the Great Lakes. When two orbiting neutron stars collide, they merge and form a black hole, releasing enormous amounts of energy in the process. Armed with state-of-the-art supercomputer models, scientists have shown that colliding neutron stars can produce the energetic jet required for a gamma ray burst. Earlier simulations demonstrated that mergers could make black holes. Others had shown that the high-speed particle jets needed to make a gamma ray burst would continue if placed in the swirling wreckage of a...
Okay, so thank you very much, ma'am. So here's the actual sound of neutron stars colliding. Are you ready? Was it. Tremendous amount of energy released. Black hole is created unless something else happens. If a black hole is not created, a magnetar is created. So a neutron star collision produces a magnetar, and we need another scientist to bring in here and explain these things to us.
When these stars die, they no longer have the light pressure pushing outward to counteract the massive gravity pulling inward. So this enormous inward force is so strong that it overcomes the repulsive force that keeps atoms from collapsing. Protons and electrons are forced into the same space, becoming neutrons, and the whole thing is just made of neutrons. Oh, did the star have hydrogen, helium, carbon, and iron before? Well, that's too bad, because now it's all neutrons. You get pulsars when neutron stars first form, when all that former star is compressed into a tiny package. The conservation of angular momentum spins the star to tremendous velocities, sometimes hundreds of times a second. But when neutron stars form, about 1 in 10 does something really strange, becoming one of the most mysterious and terrifying objects in the universe. They become magnetars. Now, you probably heard the name, but what are they? Now, as I said, magnetars are neutron stars formed from supernovas. But something unusual happens as they form, spinning up their magnetic field to an intense level. In fact, stars aren't exactly sure.
Now, don't go to sleep on this. This is where we're working at, right at the point of getting a handle on this crop circle. And I know I've taken you on a long journey, but it's coming back to the point. So give this guy one more shot.
Trajectory, and then the second one off. But instead of forming a regular neutron star, all these binary interactions turn into a magnetar. Now, there you go. Mystery may be solved. The strength of the magnetic field around a magnetar completely boggles the imagination. The magnetic field of the Earth's core is about 25 Gauss. And here on the surface, we experience less than half a Gauss. A regular bar magnet is about 100 Gauss. Just a regular neutron star has a magnetic field of 1,000,000,000,000 Gauss. And magnetars are 1,000 times more powerful than that, with a magnetic field of 1,000,000,000,000 Gauss.
The most magnetic object in the universe is a magnetar. So we're looking at a crop circle that perhaps is portraying the most magnetic object in the universe. All right, let's see, going back, what we're looking at here are two neutron stars colliding, and the center dot is the magnetar that is formed. That's the interpretation we're working on. Who knows if we're right? But people came to the farmer's field like they always do. They pay admission sometimes. Guess where they gathered? All right, okay, where did they gather? They gathered at the magnetar. That's the magnetar. Okay, the outside cores of the neutron star. Now, they didn't know this is a magnetar. They thought it was some kind of spiritual activity, but they're there meditating and feeling the energy that is coming from this crop circle. But that's the magnetar from what we're looking at. Now we got to find out which of these theories that we talked about is right. Did the Vandals do it and drive 58 miles and do another one? That's possible. It has nothing to do with magnetars. It's just two bunch of drunks made pretty nice crop circles. That's possible. Spiritual labyrinths. Maybe a group of spiritual crop circle makers came and did this so that this would be a meditative event. Well, I disregarded that theory because spiritual people are nice. And they're compassionate. And they care about people, and they certainly would not vandalize two farmers' fields. And it cost $2,000-$3,000 for that farmer to replace his crop. They would have at least asked the farmer, can we make a labyrinth? They didn't. So I disregarded the nice people. A wormhole. I have to admit, I didn't look at wormholes. They scare me. A mirror image, matter and antimatter. That was another one that I didn't look at and thought, well, maybe I'm supposed to look at that. But I liked the idea of the neutron stars making a magnetar. And so I asked myself, how are you going to tell the difference between all of these theories? Which one is correct? And then I realized the answer was completely simple. Okay, get ready for your wow. Remember, what attracted me to these crop circles was they were both made on July 13th. That's the answer. Why? Because, here comes the first little bit of wow. On July 14th, two astronomers in Madrid discovered a magnetar. The Swift magnetar was discovered July 14th by Italian and Spanish researchers in Madrid and Catalonia. 24 hours after the crop circle went down in England. Pretty cool. Now, I'm quoting from my book, so stay awake. In a second academic paper with 19 authors, the magnetar observed was named Swift, blah, blah, blah. It continued to be observed until April of 2012. A third article said it had extraordinary periodic modulations at the spin period of the underlying neutron star. It also said the outburst radiates away in minutes. A fourth article from Harvard confirmed this magnetar was discovered July 14th, exactly one day after these two crop circles were reported. The wow is coming. I can feel it. Magnetar pulses were extraordinary. They watched it for 25 days carefully. Every astronomer in the world took his telescope and started looking for that magnetar. The pulse was every 6 to 12 seconds, and then they died out. Okay, so this is a graph of those pulses beginning on July 4th. What did I say? 14th, yeah. Okay, not before. So the center dot is the tiny magnetar formed by the merger of two neutron stars. And that crop circle seems to be saying that. And if we were to translate the message from ET or whoever, here it would be in English. Pay attention to a coming magnetar event. It will occur very soon. It will teach you more about the origin of gamma ray bursts, magnetism, and the physics of neutron star mergers. It took scientists 6 years before they discovered that what they were looking at was a magnetar. They didn't know that on July 14th. Okay, they didn't know how it formed. And it was only 6 years later that they said, okay, this is two neutron stars colliding. But somebody knew about this 24 hours before humans knew about it. So my final question to myself was, if the magnetar was observed here on Earth on July 14th, how could one have known about it 24 hours earlier? Where would an observer have to be to detect it 24 hours earlier? Well, I said, what if you were on Pluto? Well, you would see the magnetar 5 hours before we saw it. Someone saw it 24 hours before we saw it. So here we go. Could this actually be a message from, what are you supposed to do now? You could do that too. Well, you're still awake, so I'm ready to do my final crop circle. And this is going to take us back to molecular biology. Okay. But this is just as good as all the others. And I think the wow will be, you will be doing the wow one more time. Here we go. Roundway Hill, July 23rd, 2011. What in that? You look at that, most of the crop circles I look at, I say, this is way over my head. I don't even want to get involved. This is too complex for me. What in God's name is that? But it's kind of looked molecular. Well, guess what? That same guy with his Ph.D. in organic chemistry from Caltech said, I know what that is. So here's a long shot of it. It's about the size of a football field. And we're supposed to believe they came and did that at 3 o'clock in the morning, a group of people. Very exact. Little dots here and there, just in the right spot. And here it is, a long shot right near the White Horse of Devizes. Devizes is a small village in England, population of 13,000. There are about 20 white horses in England. Some date back 1,000 years, some are just a few decades old. This one's only a few decades old. They're made out of chalk. So it's near a white horse. It's in a farmer's field. But here is what the scientists said it was. It's melatonin. What? Melatonin? Yeah, melatonin. Superimposed on the crop circle, there it is. And this guy deserves the Nobel Prize as far as I'm concerned, because you wouldn't figure that out unless you really had a real good knowledge of chemistry and molecular biology. I said, what are the tiny, tiny dots? He said, they're hydrogen atoms. So I step in and say, why in God's name is somebody going to make a crop circle on melatonin? Are they selling us sleep aids? ET has been co-opted by Pfizer and is doing stuff. That was a joke, but it didn't go over very well. So what do we know about melatonin? Well, melatonin is produced by a pineal gland or pineal gland, and when you go to sleep, you produce melatonin. So that's why they give you melatonin, so you'll sleep better at night. Okay? But Descartes said the pineal gland is the seat of the soul. So if you're into your spiritual things, maybe this is something to do with spirituality. Okay? I didn't go there. But that's all I knew about melatonin. But with this book, you have to say, okay, are you ready to do your homework? Because it's time to do molecular biology and learn more about it. The change in the duration or secretion of melatonin serves as a biological signal for the organization of day length. Melatonin secretion happens in animals too. and it correlates with seasons, reproduction, behavior, coat growth, camouflage, and coloring in certain seasons. In addition, melatonin can either suppress libido or increase it, depending on the species. It's not just human. Vertebrates all produce melatonin. So I thought this was cool. Look, light and dark. Melatonin has something to do with light and dark, doesn't it? Well, the circles are light and dark. Good for you. Great symbolism. We need to have a symbology conference on these things. Half light, half dark. Now, here are things I never knew about melatonin, and this is where the research takes you, and this is where you say, well, now it's starting to make a little more sense. First, it has a positive impact on radiation, on stress, headaches, and tinnitus, ringing in the ears. I didn't know that, did you? Okay, it strengthens the immune system, has an anti-inflammatory effect, helps dealing with infectious diseases. Good, didn't know that. Low melatonin levels are associated with schizophrenia and mood disorders. Aha, maybe the people who made this are schizophrenic? No. Then the research proceeded to a place where I said, aha, now it is getting interesting. Melatonin is involved with heat and temperature regulation. In humans, the circadian rhythm of melatonin is strictly associated with core body temperature. The nocturnal decline of core body temperature, CBT, inversely is related to the rise in melatonin. If you go to sleep at night and you're hot and sweaty, your melatonin level goes down. If you're cool at night, your melatonin level increases. And this whole process is related to fertility. Here comes a lady from New Zealand to tell you that melatonin has something to do with ovaries.
You've probably heard about melatonin as being a hormone that helps control our sleep and wake cycle. But melatonin isn't just something that those suffering from jet lag may be focused on. New research is now showing that this humble hormone has an important role to play in a woman's fertility. Technically, it acts as an antioxidant in the ovaries, removing free radicals and preventing cellular damage, especially during ovulation, when our eggs are the most vulnerable. The end result? Will optimal amounts of melatonin create healthier and more fertile eggs.
Isn't that interesting? Now, we didn't know that probably, but it also affects the boys too. So here's a fertility expert from UCLA.
40, even 50% of the time in couples, men are the problem. Therefore, they need to get evaluated just as often as females to make sure we're giving these couples the best possible care to establish their pregnancy goals. So here are 5 ways that men can improve their sperm. The first, what we know is that sperm like to be a little bit colder than the rest of the body. Speed thrills, heat kills. That laptop, get it off your lap. What we found is that when a man has a laptop directly on his lap, it actually cooks his thighs and therefore his testicles to about 5 degrees hotter than they should be. And we've seen sperm counts go down in men that have laptops on their laps for more than 2 to 3 hours a day. We also find that there may be some transmission of Wi-Fi signals or even radiation that can be even more profoundly affected by Wi-Fi signals and by having that laptop directly on there. So heat kills, speed thrills. We want those guys to swim as fast as possible. To that end, number 2 is going to be stay out of the hot tubs, stay out of the saunas, stay out of hot yoga. Anything that really keeps that core body temperature up is going to cook those sperm and not make them viable. So again, heat kill.
So, well, there's something else.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark Squire, the fertility expert, and if you want to find out a way to improve your male fertility and your sperm quality, then stay tuned and watch this video on how to cool your balls. Seriously. Thanks so much. Stay tuned.
So, cooling your balls, there are products. So, you wondered, where is he going in this lecture? Well, here it is. I'm actually selling this product. It's called Snowball's Underwear, and we'll be selling it in the back after. So you know these blue ice cubes, you put those in the freezer, but they go right in the underwear, and it really, actually, it does work because it keeps your scrotum cool and your sperm motility. Now, let's get serious, and that product is back there by the coffee machine. Now, one author called it Spermageddon, because what is happening, no, this is serious. This is about male sperm counts are going down across the entire planet, okay? Global warming, let's review what we've learned. Global warming produces higher core body temperatures. Higher core body temperatures depress melatonin. Decreased melatonin levels are bad for ovarian health and male spermatogenesis. So that's the connection. If you look at this graph, this is a graph of sperm motility in 1989 down to 2004. It's down 48% in the United States, in Northern Europe, in Australia, in New Zealand, across the planet. Male sperm counts are down by half. Okay? The human male is losing his productivity. And it's more than that. Not only is sperm count declining, and now this stuff I never knew, but so is the quality of human progeny. Not only is the sperm not so cool, I didn't mean that literally, I mean you got that. Or this is IQ. Global IQ is declining. Did you know that? 14%. Global IQ across the planet is declining from 1950 to the present. It's down about 14%. I'm not sure about that 14%, but you can see that from that graph. Now, I knew a lot about IQ as a psychologist, but this stuff was all new to me. Heat and IQ are related. In a study of 6,000 children, those conceived in summer and born in spring had a significantly lower IQ. There's a statistically significant correlation of 0.33 between IQ and season of the year. I didn't know that. I did know that people in the South have lower IQs than people in the North, but I always thought that was due to educational opportunities. I never thought it was due to heat. There's more data on this. Children conceived in spring and born in winter were longer, heavier at birth, taller, had larger head circumference at age 7, and had higher IQs. Children conceived in hotter months show a higher incidence of birth defects, spina bifida, cleft palate, Down syndrome. Children conceived in winter had higher IQs than children conceived in summer. I didn't know any of that. So, guess what? Longevity is involved too. A Swedish study looked at 6 million births and correlated the data and found that children who were conceived in summer died earlier than children conceived in winter. So this is huge. And guess what? Stud dogs have the same problem. Dog fertility is down, and so is dog sperm. A study of stud dog fertility found a sharp decline in sperm quality over a 26-year period. So Lassie has the same problems that we do. Male insect fertility is halved due to climate change. Insect populations generally have experienced horrific declines. Another study reported increasing problems in animals in folliculogenesis, gametogenesis, ovulation, and perinatal mortality. So, here are 4 steps. We've done our homework. Let's put this together. 1, global warming produces higher core body temperatures that decreases melatonin. Yes. 2, lower melatonin impacts male fertility and female ovarian health. 3, lower quality of sperm and ovarian health impacts intelligence and longevity. 4, global warming impacts melatonin in animal fertility. Remember, this crop circle is next to a white horse. Okay, back to the crop circle, getting ready for our wow, putting together our homework and saying, what are we doing? Half white and dark circles symbolize day and night rhythms. Good. There they are. Back to the crop circle again. Appearance near the white horse points to animal fertility, as well as human fertility, and how melatonin is related to it. So I wanted to say, well, can you connect any more dots? And I said, well, yeah. What about July 23rd? How could you integrate that into the interpretation?
But then why is the population growing exponentially on the planet if that's the case?
Well, I mean, we have billions of sperm. The quality of the population is declining, but you're right. We're producing, but the quality of our sperm is declining, and the motility is declining. So, let me make my last point, and then we'll get to questions because I'm almost done with this whole talk. July 23rd was named the hottest day of the year in the UK in 2018. The hottest day ever in Chicago also happened on July 23rd. Beyond individual cases like that, over 30 years they reviewed what's the hottest day of the year, and they said the hottest week of the year in North America is between July 22nd and July 28th. This crop circle goes down in the hottest week on the planet in the northern hemisphere. That's interesting. Here's global warming. This crop circle is about global warming. That's 1900. This is 1920. Here comes World War II. And here comes Kennedy. And here comes Jimmy Carter. And here comes the year 2000. And here comes 2015. Okay? So this is a crop circle about global warming, not about sleep tablets to improve your sleep at night. So again, the question is, who made this crop circle? All right, let's say human melatonin activists did it. Wait a minute, there might be melatonin activists. Well, how do you know there aren't? There could be people who say melatonin is the key ingredient for ovarian health, for male sperm health, for IQ. Maybe there is such a group, and maybe they went to this little tiny city on July 23rd and made a crop circle. And then we can say, yes, crop circles are made by humans, not aliens. But why would they vandalize a farmer's field if they're interested in human fertility and human potential and human intelligence and longevity? Why would they vandalize a farmer's field, and why would they make a crop circle that no one understands or cares about? Why don't you write it in English? Stop global warming, it seriously injures human fertility. That would be a good crop circle to put down. But that's not what they put down. And this crop circle was not made by humans. That's the point of this book. That's the point of this talk. So let's translate the message. Get ready for your wow. A crop circle about melatonin. Here it is from E.T. Human-induced alterations in your planet's climate will have a negative effect on your progeny. It is important for you to learn more about melatonin and its impact on human and vertebrate fertility. The survival of your species and other living creatures depend upon it. Wow. So I'm concluding now. Let's summarize this talk in reverse order. So we talked about a crop circle that's about melatonin, and we wondered who would make that. But there is a message here about, to the human race, a benevolent message about global warming and human fertility and the progress of the human race. We talked another one. This is an educational crop circle, alerting us to something we knew very little about in 2011, how neutron stars produce magnetars. We talked about vitamin A and its relationship to human condition, and how 1/7 of the human race is impacted by the deficiency in that. And here's another crop circle that warned about the possibility of a Chernobyl happening in England. And that's how we deciphered it. So my conclusion is that I'm not trying to say that, I've discovered that aliens exist or aliens are giving us messages. But the point of my book is these things are mysterious, and if you really get into them, it doesn't make a lot of sense to pretend that drunks and tricksters and trespassers made all this stuff. They're too complex, they're too intricate, and those people that I interviewed don't know about nuclear physics and melatonin and vitamin A, and they don't care about human fertility. So whoever is sending these messages, we are missing it, and we are ignoring it, and science ignores it entirely, and academia ignores it entirely. So here's Elon Musk.
If there are super intelligent aliens out there, they're probably already observing us. That would seem quite likely, and we just are not smart enough to realize it.
He thinks we're not, they're probably observing us, but you didn't hear that too well. So I have to get that better. At any rate, he said, if there are super intelligent aliens, and I think there might be, they're observing us, but we're not paying any attention to it. Well, we're certainly not paying any attention to crop circles. So that's the book, and thank you very much. No, that was always there. Was the white horse part of the crop circle? No, the white horse was always there. It's a fixture that's been there since 1999. Yes?
How many other crop circles have you investigated?
40. In my book, 40. And the majority of crop circles go into a folder that I label over my head. Too difficult. I have no idea what they mean. And I wish there were more intelligent people who are in symbology, linguistics, symbol interpretation, who were interested, who you could talk to. Because a lot of work needs to be done. There's a lot of mathematical crop circles that are out of this world. And some of in my book, but I only did 40. Yes.
Yeah, so if the crop circles are in code like this, couldn't you make the same argument? Why wouldn't they make it more explicit and clear for everyone to understand? Why would they speak in code?
I asked that question in the end of my book. If they're trying to communicate with us, why don't they try it in English or Russian or something? So they choose not to do that. And so that is a weakness of the argument. But you could say that they're putting it in a language that is accessible to either no one or to everyone. This is not related to Russian or English, or there are no, if you look at a crop circle in Switzerland and one in Holland and one in Kansas, you can't see anything about that crop circle that looks like it's Kansas. They all look like they're from the same.
Universal.
Universal is the word. Thank you. So maybe the language they're using is a universal language. Yes?
Just to support a couple of your theories, which I like, on the last crop circle that you were showing, below the white horse was another crop circle that actually looked like a little egg being impregnated by a sperm surrounded by a multitude of little dots.
I better go back.
Yeah, you should look at that one.
But I think that's part of the farmer's field. There are lots of fixtures in English countryside where the government has ruled that a certain area you can't plow that under because there's some Neolithic something or other there. Mm-hmm. So I think
this was a crop circle.
I don't think that's part of the crop circle.
No, it was a different one. It was in a field below the white horse, in Devizes though.
That's what I'm talking about.
A different field.
You want to go back? Sure. Let's take a look.
You know, the horse is on a hill. The melatonin one is on the top of the hill.
Are you talking about this?
No, I'm not. I'm talking on another field below the white horse. That's not in your picture.
Oh, it's not in my picture?
It's not in your picture.
Okay.
But there was another crop circle that year that would look like an egg being fertilized. So just
I
to
see.
support your theory.
Okay.
There was another one, another magnetar and crop circle pair that happened. This was, the magnetar was December 27th, 2004, I think? Yes, or 2005, December 27th. There was a
Good.
pulse. And there were two crop circles that were in 2004 and 2005 that looked like interference patterns. And the one in 2004, they were both in the same town called Shalborn, which I think is, shall be born. I think that's, I think that's important, using all the clues like you're doing.
Right. We're doing
Using
Rorschach blot.
That's right,
that's
exactly.
what we
You
are.
use everything. They're holographic as far as I can tell. Yeah. And they look like overlapping interference patterns. And the first one was a little bit wider, and the second one was very close. It looked a lot like your animation.
Well, I have
actually.
another one in, I may have, I think in my book, I may be talking about that.
And there was a magnetar that happened in
Yeah.
the winter.
Yeah,
right between those two.
I have to read my book, but I think I've got that book. I think I've got that crop circle in my book.
Oh, could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Bill's okay. The Bill's next.
So Jerry, it was to me a fantastic presentation, and very, very well done.
Yeah.
After 30 years of being a UFO researcher and trying to get people to look at this stuff, I'm wondering a question. So 5 years ago or so, Susan Taylor came over here and she got up and started to talk about it. And I said, hey, why don't you just show your documentary? Which she did, and everybody was like, oh my God, that's fantastic. And then we talked about it. Colin Andrews had been at it forever, starting about 25 years ago, trying to get people to look at these pictographs in relationship to what you did.
I correspond with him.
Yeah, I bet. But my question to you is, it seems after all this time, it's only in small groups like this that people are even having a clue about it.
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering, the idea that it's not absolutely well known and internationally there are extraterrestrials, there's different species, blah, blah, blah. Where do you see us going if we don't wake up collectively? Because it's such a small minority.
Yes, it's true. And one of the reasons I like to talk to this group is because I once gave a talk to MUFON, a UFO group in Ohio, and I was not impressed with the level of intelligence of the audience. There were some really smart people, and there were some people who were outpatients. But this subject is, have you noticed that the government is starting to slowly warm up to the idea that maybe UFOs are real?
Right, so if we go back in time a little bit, 1996, Gordon Cooper, #1 of the original Mercury 7 astronauts, came on a show called Paranormal Borderline. It was the only time he did, and he openly talked about the UFO phenomena and the fact that he wrote the United Nations.
Right.
It was hosted by Jonathan Frakes, one of the Star Trek guys.
I know that whole story, yep.
Right at the same time, Ben Rich was dying. Ben Rich was former head of Skunk Works at Lockheed, and he said, look, we have already been on Mars. Currently, 1996 he's saying this, or 95, we are in other solar systems. And I'm looking at this stuff and thinking, back then, my God, no one is paying attention. Now here we are, 2019, and your great presentation, unfortunately, was not on Oprah Winfrey.
No, and it never will be, I'm sure. Thank you. Yes, this gentleman over here.
Yeah. So you just made a point. I just want to counter that whole thing about the government being interested in UFOs and stuff is in a very sliver of a context. And if you look at the information to the Star Academy, it's always paranoid military ideation about enemies coming from other planets.
That's
So
right.
They're not really interested in the subject insofar as creating a lot of fear around it. But that's a side note. The original point that I was going to make earlier had to do with your point about the medium and the audience. So this, I mean, if these guys are so intelligent, this makes as much sense to me to try to explain the nuances of Chinese calligraphy to Neanderthals. I mean, it makes no sense because the audience of the planet, as it were, do not pay attention to this. This is way too subtle. Why use such a medium such as this to try to make all of these nuanced points where nobody's paying attention?
What's the question?
So is that why use such a medium that's so obscure to most of humanity if it's supposed to give a message to humanity?
Well,
nobody's paying attention.
I struggled with that myself, and I've come up with a few of my own reasons, and I'm not sure I'm convinced of. There's an old Russian joke. Somebody said, "What do you think of Russia, or of Brezhnev?" And he said, "Well, I don't like Brezhnev, but I disagree with myself." So what I'm trying to say is, I think one rationale might be that the U.S. government, when UFOs are spotted, they tend to run away. In most of the cases, when a confrontation occurs between a fighter plane and a UFO, and somebody or shines their lights at a UFO, the UFO leaves. It's as if the UFO does not want to be detected. It is if so maybe the language is for the elites. Maybe this is not something like they land and they say, "Take me to your leader," and I'm going to speak English and I'm an alien. Maybe they understand that the human race would get panicked over that, and that would cause a certain amount of collective hysteria. So maybe these are messages meant for what they imagine to be the scientific elite, because they're obviously talking about molecular biology and nuclear physics. They're not leaving messages about, take good care of your kids. So that's my only attempt at answering. Yes.
Yes. Do you know if all or what percentage of the crop circles are tested for the heightened levels of radiation?
Yes, there are.
And if they are, then how come that isn't just right there the deciding factor that they are indeed extraterrestrial created, as opposed to somebody out there with a 2x4?
Well, there's some kind of a disinformation process going on. When somebody first came out and said, yes, if you take an infrared photograph of a crop circle, the authentic ones show infrared heat signatures, and the ones made by drunks don't. But then somebody came along and said, we're making crop circles with microwave ovens now. And somehow they do. So I have a feeling the government may be involved in disinformation about crop circles too. Some people believe that.
Yes, hi. When I saw my first crop circle and Unsolved Mysteries back in the 70s, it changed my paradigm. I knew they were real, and I knew I would go to see one, and I did.
Where, in England?
In England, in 1979. Or 89, excuse me. And I know they're such a fascinating anomaly. And I read some of Freddie Silva's book, Secrets in the Field.
Yes.
And they're created within minutes. There's kind of pulse waves, sonar and ultra sound waves, and they're created within minutes, literally minutes. And he calls them interdimensional temples. But I think the most fascinating one was the one when Carl Sagan sent that signal out in space.
Yes.
And he said, this is what humans are like, and he gave 6 criteria with the one that was in Puerto Rico.
Yes.
You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Can you speak back to it? Because within 1 year, the ET, one race, sent back their imprint.
Chill
Their
bottom.
Exactly.
So Carl Sagan made out a message, and you could ask, why didn't you put that in English? He didn't. It was a pictogram that was on a spacecraft, written in the language of hydrogen atoms, and it depicted the human DNA, and it described where we are with respect to various pulsars in the universe, so that you would know where we're located from. Well, a few years later, there was a crop circle that appeared in England that was almost in the same language, and it was pixelated. It was not like an usual crop circle. just pixelated, and it answered the question. And it said, we're from this galaxy, and we're about 3 feet tall, and there are 23 billion of us. And but a lot of people think Chill Button was made by geeks, but you don't. Okay, but it's in my book. No, it's not in this book, but it was in a prior book that I wrote. But I think it lost a little of its authenticity from me. I'm not sure. Yeah. Who's next? Yes.
So you gave some interesting explanations, but you didn't actually explain at all how the extraterrestrials are doing this, what technology they're using, because the output is very simple. It's just some bent grass, so you don't need to be very sophisticated.
The theory in the crop circle community is balls of light, that somebody made a video in the middle of the night of how a crop circle was formed, and you see a little ball of light going around, and the wheat going down underneath this ball of light. I don't know how they do it, but it's like they're etch-a-sketching crop. What we do know, there was a couple camping out right near a crop circle, that they were just campers, and they said they went to sleep, and they were up at 3 a.m, and there it was. It's like they didn't hear anybody. It just happens. It happens rapidly. But how it's done, we don't know.
I just have a question because I don't know much about crop circles and where.
I apologize. I'm sorry. There was someone on that side next.
Oh.
No, you get to hold that for your next after that.
Hi. I just, when I do a psychic reading, whoever's sending out the messages, what I see is that they don't speak language like we do, and they think in terms of mathematical symbols, and they speak the language of science.
Yes.
And it's like we understand. Those who understand science understand it.
The strange thing is, if you read the crop circle connector, many people give their interpretations, and a lot of the interpretations are psychic, spiritual, new age, sacred geometry, all that sort of thing. And for some reason, I'm a psychologist, and I don't know why I was not motivated to go there, but I felt it was too subjective, and I had a feeling that that crop circles have to do with deep science. So in my 40 crop circles, I would say whoever is doing them cares about the human race. They're benevolent. They are warnings. They're also, they're not all warnings. Some of them are simply, but I didn't find any. I found one, I thought, that was a spiritual statement. And then someone came along and said, no, I made that. And I said, oh, okay. And I decided to take that out of the book. Here we go. Left, right, center.
Of the 4,000 crop circles that you mentioned, what is the distribution like around the world? Are there certain areas of the Earth where there are more, or how does that
most
work?
occur in England. That's suspicious. Well, most of the crop circle makers are in England too, so most of the trespassers are there. If you look at a normal curve, it's skewed to England. One argument I could make for why does ET prefer England? Well, the people in England pay attention to crop circles. They photograph them from the air. Crop circles in Russia and Poland are photographed from the ground, and you don't get to see them. You've got to see them from the air, otherwise they don't make a great deal of sense. So you can see crop circles in Slovenia, and you can't make much out of them because they're photographed laterally.
Just the ancient drawings that are in different parts of the world, do you think that also may have something to do with, like ancient crop circles? I don't know how to describe them, but they're...
Well, my wife and I went to Peru to the Nazca lines. Have you walked them? And if you're down there, you don't even know what's there. It looks like a path. But if you're flying above it, you see the great birds, and they're hundreds of acres long. So the people who made these, if they were made by people, they seem to be messages to the gods. I think these are not crop circles from the gods. They are messages to the gods. You can see Nazca lines from outer space. They're
Yes.
that long.
So you think that those were actually made by human beings then?
I do. I think they were messages to the gods.
Okay, thank you.
But who knows? Yes.
Well, I flew over the Nazca lines, and I felt like they were prayers, like requests or something, like maybe a drought or something.
Yes. Yeah. Hummingbird.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if you could comment on a study I read a while ago, because it talked about studying the lengths of the burn marks on the grain, and the conclusion. So I just read this one little study, and the conclusion was that whatever it was, there was a spherical relationship between the lengths of these, such that it sort of correlated with the conclusion with some type of radiation.
Yes.
Is the way these are distributed, and the person was speculating that different heights and different burst energies could form all these interlocking circles that, like the pattern on the screen there, might be made with 10 or 15 circles, or some small amount of circles make all these patterns. So it's an interesting article. Have you read about stuff like that?
I only read that if you take some of the grains from the crop circle inside, the ones that have the radiation, and you plant them, they grow faster. And they are much more productive than the other adjacent ones that are not in the crop circle. That's all there's a lot of that kind of research, which I didn't cover a lot in my book, but I just in a cursory way.
Is it true that they continue to grow when they're made properly?
Well,
they just grow shorter because they're loose?
No, they're pushed down. But if you take them into the laboratory and grow them, then they will sprout. But you've wrecked the farmer's field. The average cost is between 1,000 and 3,000 pounds to a farming. Yes. Yes.
Excellent research, but I was wondering, you identified several interesting global concerns. Were there other major global concerns that came out that you didn't talk about tonight that are important messages that we should be aware of?
Absolutely. There's one on nuclear fission and fusion in France. Very intriguing. There are some mathematical crop circles in my book on twister theory. Do you know what twister theory is? It's string theory, in physics string theory. And there are like hints for, there's a crop circle which I talked to a scientist about. I said, what is that? And he said, that's graphene. Graphene is a very mysterious new discovery. It's a lattice work of atoms that you take one graphene sheet on another. It's stronger than steel. It's the miracle material for the 21st century. There's a crop circle about that. So it's a very interesting subject, and I only did 4. Don't get me started. There are 40 wows in this book, by the way. Yes.
A few years ago, we have a crop circle here in the Watsonville, I think. Was it? Did you
It
study
looked like a computer chip.
with some numbers in there, I think.
Yeah, well, I didn't like it too much because it looked too Silicon Valley-ish, so I ignored
Could be a
it.
message to us.
Yeah, no, they don't make local messages. They don't write letters to the. They don't write letters to the Dutch and say, get rid of the wooden shoes.
That was a great lecture, and I appreciate the double spiral that came out and the way you described the magnetar and the black holes and stuff. But and this is a plug also for Bob Whitehouse's coming up lecture, October 25th on the torus. It turns out he's been studying the torus and just wrote a book about it. And one of the things he talks about, even before he wrote the book, is that if you take a torus with one point and you go around from the inside, first of all, it can rotate this way, it can also rotate that way. And so if you follow one point as it goes all the way from the inside to the outside perimeter, and draw it out over time, it makes a spiral.
Yes.
And if you actually then take it the other way back, it makes a reverse spiral. And so since these are two-dimensional things, this is actually, and all your pictures showed an actual torus in these form fields. And so I think there's a lot of connection there, which also, it may be illustrating how critical the torus is as a primary thing of nature. Anyway.
Okay.
Isn't that a magnetic field?
That is the cover of my book. And it is a supernova emanating gamma rays, and it has something to do with string theory. But I forgot what it is. But it's not only pretty, but these things here, 2, 4, they have a numerical sequence. And the numerical sequence between matter and antimatter particles follow that numerical progression out from the center. So in the book, we talk about it. It's extremely complex. It's deep physics. It's about matter and antimatter. And it's amazing.
I think you're going to sell a few copies.
I don't think I will. So where are we going now? Is that it? That's it?
Oh, one more.
One more. The white horse? I can tell you. The white horse has always been there. And so whoever put the crop circle put it near the white horse to make a point. What's the point? Stud dogs. Think stud dogs. Melatonin, sperm, fertility. It's not just human males who are going to buy my underwear in the back, but it's all animals are suffering from the same decline in sperm counts. Okay, so the underwear is in the boxes back there. Oh, one more question. None.
Does your book have color?
We're selling merch. By the way, I want to thank my wife, Anya, for a year ago. She said, you need to write a book on this. And I said, why? And she said, I don't know, you should. And she just kept saying it, so I kept doing it. Yeah.
Does your book have color pictures?
It has. I self-published it because it has 280 photographs, and you can't make a paperback. Sorry, it's not available. It would cost $300 to do that. But it's on Kindle, it's free, and it's in color.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Was there a crop circle that happened at the same time as 9/11 in New York?
No. Well, there might have been, but guess what? There was a crop circle that came at the financial crisis of 2008.
One more question.
Yes.
My question to you is melatonin correlated with meditation and exercise? And is there a danger of excessive melatonin?
I don't know. I didn't go there, but that's a good question. I would imagine, since Descartes said the pineal gland is related to the seat of the soul, I wonder if melatonin, it said melatonin is related to stress, right? So if you're meditating, I would imagine the deeper the meditation, the higher your melatonin levels. But you have to research that. I didn't. But I think it's a very good question. Yes.
I have a comment. I spent a couple weeks in that area in England,
Yes.
wondering, who made these, and so I poked around at the Crop Circle Cafe.
Oh.
So I asked a lot of questions, and of course they really believed in mainly the locals having these competitions. But then they kept saying to me, where do they get their inspiration for them? So it sort of came to who and what is inspiring them to make a particular crop circle, if they are indeed mostly made by humans. And I thought that was important to take in, that the message is still coming through, maybe through different hands.
When I talk to the crop circle boys, they're mainly boys, men. They just make pretty designs on spirographs. And they don't think through the meaning. If you ask them, what's the meaning of your crop circle, they run away. They don't want to say, they just say, I made that and I'm proud of it. And look what I did with the wheat. You see how that wheat was just moved like that? That's how I did it. So I was not impressed with them. They didn't seem to make profound crop circles or design a crop circle that had some kind of meaning. Well, I didn't feel that. I just ignore their stuff. I don't have a lot of respect for them. They're just trying to deceive us. The name of that movie was Secrets of Deception, right? Okay, can I go? Wonderful audience.